Have you ever caught yourself saying or truly believing that all women seem to share certain traits? Maybe all women are gold diggers. Maybe all women are social climbers. Maybe all women just want to treat guys badly and take them for everything they're worth. Maybe women don't really love guys the same way men love women. If what I'm saying now it sounds like something you've heard me say before, it's because last week I made a video starting exactly the same way. And when I did that, I said, if you've ever caught yourself having this belief, it can be because of one of two reasons. I said that one was because of your locus of attraction, which I talked about last week in detail. I said the second reason was because of your seduction demons. And I promised you a video this week about seduction demons, and that's what this week's about. So what are your seduction demons? Well, unfortunately, what they're not is they're not the main antagonist from the last season of Supernatural. For crying out loud, when will you guys finally release the second half of the last season? Actually, your seduction demons are a part of your way of attracting women that runs really deep. In fact, dealing with your seduction demons and overcoming your seduction demons they are the linchpin. They're at the very core, the very center of 80% of what goes wrong has been going wrong for all of you watching in your relationships and your dating experiences. Now, I'm not going to say today that watching this video is going to magically fix this problem. It runs deep. I mean, super deep. It is really hard work to change, but it is the most important thing about yourself, your personal growth as a man, that's going to impact how your relationships and your dating success is going to go in your future. So what I hope to achieve today is, first of all, expand your awareness to understand what your seduction demons are and start you on a journey that allows you to start to work through them, because this is a journey that can take you many, many months to years to really fully work your way through. So if you're ready to go down the dark and dangerous tunnel that is your seduction demons, stay tuned and let's get stuck in. To begin to really understand your seduction demons, we need to start with something that sounds far more boring, which is relationship dynamics. Now, between any two people, this can be platonic or romantic, you always have a relationship dynamic unfolding. Now, a relationship dynamic always requires two people to play their role to have the dynamic, otherwise the dynamic doesn't exist. So what are some really common relationship dynamics that we see cropping up, or that I see cropping up, that many of you guys will be experiencing yourselves? You could have your anxious and avoidant attachment styles. Now, I've done a video on this in the past. Basically, you can have a dynamic where one person is constantly chasing the other one in the relationship. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? The other one's constantly saying, give me some space, give me some space, give me some space. I need my alone time. And this is a dynamic that plays out in many relationships. It's the avoidant. And I've made a video about this, which you can check out by clicking up here as well. Another typical kind of relationship dynamic would be your victim and abuser style relationship dynamic. And we've seen this before very often with women being the victim and men being the abuser. Of course, it could happen the other way around as well. But this is another relationship dynamic that plays out a lot. You've got things like your parent and your child dynamic. You've got things like your hero and your damsel, where it's usually the man, but it can be the woman too, feels they seek out women who are in desperate need of help, right? So he comes in and he gets to be the hero in her life and he gets to feel useful. And that's a dynamic that plays out. And it's not necessarily all good, because if you're a hero and you're constantly seeking out damsels to date, what you'll end up doing is dating women who are completely incapable of looking after themselves, and they'll be helpless and hopeless, and you'll lose respect for them because you can never get them to look after themselves, because you'll constantly be helping them instead of teaching them to help themselves, and they'll never self-improve. It can be very, very frustrating dynamic to get caught up in. You've got things like the let's just be friends dynamic, which I'm sure a few of you have experienced before. But another way of thinking about the let's just be friends dynamic is the unrequited lover and attention seeker dynamic, right? So that's the most painful version of the let's just be friends, where you just love this girl and she keeps stringing you along because she loves the attention. Not all let's just be friends situations are like that, but it's a very common type of dynamic that's painful that I know a lot of you have experienced. And of course, another typical dynamic to think about that I think a lot of men are aware of, even if they don't play into, which is the gold digger and the sugar daddy dynamic, which plays out. And it often plays out with some men who have a lot of money. So these are dynamics. Now, obviously, there are just hundreds of thousands of different dynamics that you could create in your relationship, right? There are the stereotype ones, but there's so many different variations. And oftentimes, we can create more than one type of dynamic can be occurring at a time, right? So you could have the gold digger and the sugar daddy scenario mixed in with the anxious and avoidant attachment style. It's really weird. I see this sometimes, right? Where he's the sugar daddy, she's the gold digger, but also he's an anxious attachment style. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And she's like, oh my God, give me space, give me space, give me space. So you can have multiple relationship dynamics playing out at the same time. Now, when it comes to understanding relationship dynamics, there's 3 important things you need to know. The first is this. We all play out relationship dynamics, by the way. And so what you do is relationship dynamics, both parties, both sides of a dynamic, seek each other out. So if you are a anxiously attached guy, in other words, if you're constantly seeking reassurance about a relationship, scared a woman's going to leave you, very needy, you are going to seek out women who are avoidant. In other words, women who won't give you those things. It's the wildest thing, but you are going to seek them out. And those women are going to seek you out. Even though you don't want to date women like that, even though women like that don't want to date you in theory, you'll seek each other out like homing missiles, like magnets. Victims and abusers, this is another one that a lot of guys struggle with mentally, is victims will seek out men who are likely to be abusive. And we've seen that before, right? And most men have seen that with female friends who date douchebags over and over and over again. They seek them out, even though they don't want that kind of man in their life. And likewise, the victims, abusers are very good at picking women who are likely to be victims. And so that's an important thing to note, because this is playing into this pattern where you feel like all women are like X, all women have this feature, is because you're seeking out, even though it's very, very subconscious, you're actively seeking women like that. And those women are actively seeking men like you, because we want to create those relationship dynamics. Or rather than want to, it's what we're comfortable with. It's what we've been wired to seek out since we're very young. As I mentioned, your relationship dynamics and your seduction demons, they are very deeply rooted in our childhood and our early forms of love and connection. The second thing that's really important to understand about relationship dynamics is that you will you can physically pull someone into meeting you in the relationship dynamic that you're comfortable with. So what do I mean by this? Well, one of the relationship dynamics that I used to create was being anxiously attached. And I had to really work hard to become more securely attached in my relationships, to have healthy relationships. That was one of my seduction demons, was my anxious attachment style. And what was really interesting is I dated a woman for a little while after I'd worked through my anxious attachment stuff. And she was incredibly anxiously attached. And I left her before too long, but what was really interesting is before I left her, I was behaving avoidant with her. So she was seeking my love and attention and security from me. And I was like, give me space, give me space, give me space. I sounded like every woman that I felt victimized by as an anxiously attached male. I'm like, holy crap, I'm sounding like that person now. Because I was getting sucked into that role. She was pulling, she was doing everything she could. She'd make me feel like I wanted to be avoidant with her. And this happens in all relationship dynamics. You know what you're comfortable with, and you can literally pull people into behaving like that. So if you're a guy who feels like women are just gold diggers, or if you're a guy who feels like women will just use you, you will actually push women to use you. You will do everything you can to make her the kind of woman who uses guys, because that's a dynamic you know and you're comfortable with. And you will do this very subconsciously. And I think the other thing that's important to say here is that that doesn't mean you deserve it. That's really important to say, actually, because if you're at the losing end of a relationship dynamic, the painful end of a relationship dynamic, both ends are always painful in their own way, but, like a victim and an abuser, the abuser's in a better position than the victim usually. But the thing is, you don't deserve it. Just because you play a role in pulling them into that space doesn't mean you deserve it. You are helpless to make the change. You're not consciously doing this to create this for yourself. You are in pain and you're hurting, but you are playing a role. And understanding that you're creating this, that you're sucking your partners into these roles, also is empowering, because it means you have the power to change it. It means not all men are like XYZ. Not all women are like XYZ, right? It means that you're pulling a lot of women, you're attracting those women, and you're in the ones who are only a little bit like that, you're actually making them a lot like that. And so that's the second thing that's important to realize. The third thing that you need to understand about relationship dynamics is whenever someone doesn't play into that role, the relationship dynamic can't exist. You cannot have a victim without an abuser. You cannot. They can behave like a victim and try to make you an abuser, but you'll never have the dynamic play out. So if you refuse to play the role, the other partner can't fall into it. Well, what's more than that is usually when you don't play a role, you will cease to attract people who want to play that dynamic with you. So the second you relinquish a relationship dynamic role or step back from it, all of a sudden, the women that you'll meet will change radically. Overnight, completely. It is mind-bending. You can go from thinking all women are just like this, a certain type of person, and all of a sudden all women are different. In fact, sometimes the same woman becomes completely different the second you stop playing into a relationship dynamic and pulling them into that with you. So where do your seduction demons come in? Well, your seduction demons are the patterns of behavior and your demons are really your emotional spaces, your expectations about love and relationships and how to attract women that cause you to set bait that attract certain kinds of women, right? So the really easy one to explain would be the gold digger and the sugar daddy dynamic, right? So you have a guy who's doing really well financially, and what he believes, it's often part of why he's become successful financially. It's a story for another day. But what he does is he says, I will be lovable. Women will love me if I demonstrate that I have lots of money. So his demon is that he believes that he's only lovable if he demonstrates lots of money. So he buys a fancy car, he drives a nice Porsche or a Lamborghini. Don't hate on Porsche drivers, by the way. I love Porsches and I will buy one day. But anyway, he drives a Porsche, he drives a Lamborghini. He shows off extravagant signs of wealth, whatever he can do, nice watches, jewelry, clothes. Make sure he looks like $1 million. He makes sure women know what he does for work really early on. He tells them, oh, I'm an investment banker, blah, blah, blah. He lets these things out of the bag really early on. And what he's doing is he is conspicuously showing wealth to attract women who want to play into the gold digger, sugar daddy dynamic, right? He is setting the bait to attract those kind of women. Those women will flock to him. Meanwhile, other women, so women like my partner, will see guys like that. And in fact, my partner sees guys in fancy cars, and every guy she sees in a fancy car, she like rolls her eyes at and makes fun of. Like she literally has no time for guys in nice cars, which sucks because I'm a car guy. But I'll get over it. But yeah, that's the thing. So women who don't want to play into the gold digger, sugar daddy dynamic will be repelled. They'll get away from you, right? So you'll actively repel women who don't want to play into that dynamic, while at the same time attracting women who do. And what happens is that's our relationship demons, because you've got this set point of how do I attract women? What bait should I set to pull into my life women? And what we believe is the way that I'm doing it now is the only way to do it, because that's what all women are like. And one way or another, that's what most of us believe. But actually, we're creating a certain dynamic already, right from the get-go, that attracts sometimes, frequently, the wrong kinds of women. And as I said in the intro, this stuff is really, really hard to change. Let me give an example that's maybe a little less personal for you, right? A little less deeply and darkly hidden inside your psyche. Most of you have known a woman who constantly dated abusive men, right? Douchebags, guys who treated her like rubbish. And she would be in tears, she'd be crying, she'd be upset because he'd hit her, or he'd treated her like rubbish, or he'd been cheating on her for the last month. And you'd say to her, okay, you've got to start changing the kind of men you date. And she's like, yes, I know I do. I don't want to date guys like this. And then you turn away for 1 second and you look at her and she's making out with some absolute douchebag in the corner at a club. And you're like, what, woman, what is wrong with you? We just had this conversation. Now, this leads a lot of men to believe that women really just love guys who treat them like rubbish. And that is not true, but it is a relationship dynamic, right? It's a victim abuser dynamic. And unfortunately, plenty of women go through life with this. This is where the whole daddy issues things come in and everything else, but let's not go down there. But it's a dynamic that's just playing out. And it is really hard. You can even understand conceptually that you're playing out a dynamic, but then the second your attention wanes or you get a little bit drunk, you forget. You're like, oh, and your brain, your emotional brain plays all these tricks on you, and all this psychobabble happens, and you can't help yourself. It's really, really hard. And it can be frustrating for those trying to help you. But your relationship demons, they run deep into your childhood version of what it means to be loved, how you gain love, and how you connect with other human beings, and what makes you valuable as a man, as a person, and what makes you deserving to have people around you and giving you support. To challenge that, to say, hey, what I believed about that stuff is wrong. What I believed about why my caregivers loved me is wrong, was a little bit out of touch. That is hard because that is so deeply ingrained in us. So how do we begin to change this pattern, right? How do we begin to shift this? Well, like most things, this is a little bit of a process that you need to go through. And I mapped it out here in front of me on my phone, so forgive me for reading these out because I don't want to get this wrong. The first big step that you need to take really is just realizing that you're playing a relationship dynamic. It's too easy. I know it's too easy to say, oh, I'm not playing a dynamic. I'm just dating women who are rubbish. Women are trash. Women are like this. Women are like that. You've heard women say all men are rapists. All men are abusive, right? We know it's not true. It's not true of women either. If there's a repeat pattern going on. So it's possible for you to date one bad egg, but if it's over and over and over again, this is now a relationship dynamic for sure. And the first step is just realizing, hey, I'm playing into a relationship dynamic. I don't know how I'm doing it. I don't know what's going on exactly, but I'm a part of this. That's the first step. And once you do that, once you really own that, then you can kind of move on. The second step is identifying what dynamic you are playing out. Right now, you can give it your own name if you can understand it. You can do a bit of Googling about relationship dynamics. What relationship dynamic am I embodying here? But really try to understand it. What are the kinds of women I'm attracting? What about my beliefs? What about the way that I'm putting myself out there enables these women? Right? Maybe not even causes them to happen, but what enables them? Right? So, if you're in a relationship where you are a hero and a damsel, what things are you doing? Are you constantly trying to support her and help her over and over and over again, rather than getting her to help herself, and only being there occasionally, right? Are you constantly there to provide support? Are you constantly providing financial support? Are you constantly, if you're doing these things, that's how you're enabling. That's how you're, giving credence to her end of the dynamic, right? Start to ask those questions. What's happening here? Then the third part, which is really hard, is, okay, what is my seduction demon? So what are the core beliefs I have about love and attraction and intimacy that really cause me to exhibit these behaviors? So for me, I'll give an example. For me, my seduction demons were, if I'm not doing what you want, if I'm not being well behaved and a nice guy, right? If I'm not exhibiting what an amazing person I am to you, I'm not deserving of your love. If I'm displeasing you, if I'm saying something that's important for me but you don't like, I don't deserve to be loved. If these are very core beliefs that I had. I have to behave and perform in a certain way or I don't deserve to be loved. And this would cause me to become anxiously attached, and this would cause me to exhibit a nice guy syndrome. Right? And that's another part of my own personal seduction demons, which was a part of my life that I'd be playing out over and over again, because that was my seduction demon, right? There's that belief about love and attraction, about when you deserve attention and when you deserve affection. That was deeply unhealthy, but I had to realize that first to begin to work on it. The next thing you need to do is you need to try to learn about the dynamic. So you really need to start to say, what are the behaviors that I do? List them out, create a list. What are the things that you've typically done in past relationships? What could you do differently that would make it impossible for that dynamic to play out, even if it meant losing that woman? Because probably she was the wrong woman, because she also wanted to play in the dynamic, probably, unless you pulled her into it. The next thing you need to do is just catch yourself. And it doesn't even have to be romantic. Anytime with a guy friend or a female friend or a girlfriend or a date, just catch yourself straight after the date. Oh, what did I do here that played back into that dynamic? What did I do? Because the next step is just becoming self-aware. When do I do it, right? Constantly questioning, because it's too easy to go subconscious and just start playing out these things without even being aware that you're doing them. So just catching yourself is another big one. And lastly, the next thing you need to do is every time you catch yourself, change it. Catch yourself, change it. Catch yourself, change it. And this takes time. And it's really, really hard. Now, I actually don't know anyone who's changed their relationship demons or, overcome them without support. Now, that could be paid support like a psychologist or a therapist, or it could be something more like men's work, having a really fantastic men's group that you attend regularly. But I don't know, or a really incredible group of friends. And I mean really incredible group of friends who are really going to help you every step of the way. Because it's hard to do on your own. And so you got to find a supportive group to work through this. But if you do not, every woman you ever date will do whatever they've been doing negatively in the past. It's not because women are generally crap. It's not because the women you're meeting are crap. It's because they're playing into a dynamic. They are just as damaged as you are in a different way. And you two are just attracting each other like magnets. It is inescapable until you deal with your seduction demons. Now, I know this has been a bit of a deep, dark topic, but it's something that I'm so passionate about because it was massively important to me, and I still work on it every month of my life. I'm working on my seduction demons in my relationship dynamics, and you should be too. It's a big part of your self-development as a man. I'd love to know what you think about this video in the comments below. As always, if you've liked this video, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. And check out some of my other videos as well. If you like this one, I reckon there's a pretty good chance you're going to like those as well. As always, take care, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.